I've spent way too much time diving through the vast ocean that is the internet, but I recently stumbled across a story so gruesome it gives me chills just thinking about it. To me, the Byford dolphin accident is the most terrifying disaster in recent history. The 4 divers trapped inside that decompression chamber didn't even have time to realize what was happening. They died in a fraction of a second. It is, without a doubt, the most brutal yet painless death in history. To understand how it happened, you have to look back at how we got there. Back in the early 60s, the economy in our region was struggling, mostly just fishing and timber. Everything changed in 1963 when the government claimed sovereign rights to the oil-rich waters off our coast. At the time, other nations thought the area was more of a burden than a strategic advantage and ceded the rights to us. A few years later, in 1969, a ship called the Ocean Viking struck gold, well, black gold. They didn't just find a little oil, they ran into one of the largest oil pockets in the entire world. Before long, we were extracting 1.6 million barrels of crude a day. One of the most important natural gas pockets was in a field called Frigg. To get to it, the government contracted a company called Dolphin Drilling. The engineers were facing a daunting challenge. From the surface to the seafloor, you're looking at hundreds of meters of water, and the gas pocket itself was over 1,800 meters below the level of the sea. They devised a plan using a massive semi-submersible drilling rig, the Byford Dolphin. This thing was a monster of engineering, over 100 meters long, 67 meters wide, and 36 meters deep. It could drill down 6,100 meters and operate in water nearly 500 meters deep. It was a self-maneuvering beast. To run a monster like that, you need a massive crew. About 102 people lived on that platform. But among the mechanics and engineers, there was a small elite team of 6 divers. Their job was maintenance and repair of the submerged parts of the platform and the drills. But this job is way more complex than people imagine. These guys weren't just mechanics, they worked in conditions that defy nature. When you're working hundreds of meters down, you can't breathe normal air. The pressure makes it unbreathable. You have to breathe a mixture called heliox, helium and oxygen, sometimes with nitrogen. But there's a catch. When you breathe that stuff under pressure, the nitrogen dilutes into your blood. If you rise to the surface too fast, that nitrogen expands and creates bubbles in your veins. We call it the bends, or rapid decompression syndrome. It causes joint pain, paralysis, or an agonizing death. Normally, it would take 24 hours of slow surfacing to stay safe, which isn't feasible for daily work. So, the Navy developed saturation diving. They found that once your blood is fully saturated with nitrogen, it hits a cap. You can stay down there as long as you want. It's not pleasant. Your body is in a constant state of bone-chilling cold, but it's possible. To make it work, they built pressurized capsules where the divers live, eat, and sleep for months at a time without ever decompressing. That's why these guys make $1,400 a day. They live in these chambers, and when it's time to work, they jump into a diving bell that's bolted to the chamber. The bell stays at the same pressure as the deep ocean, so they can go up and down without their blood boiling. On November 5th, the team consisted of 6 men, 4 saturation divers, Ed Miller, Roy Lucas, Ben Barnes, and Trevor Hall, assisted by 2 tenders on the outside, Will Crane and Marty Sanders. The accident happened as Ben and Trevor were returning from the seabed. They climbed into the bell and were hoisted up to the rig. Will and Marty attached the bell to the decompression chamber. Inside the chamber, Ed and Roy were resting. To separate the bell from the chamber safely, there's a strict 5-step process. 1. Close the inner chamber door. 2. Increase pressure in the airlock to seal it. 3. Close the outer bell door. 4. Gradually depressurize the airlock to 1 atmosphere. 5. Unhook the bell. Something went wrong at step 3. Maybe it was extreme exhaustion, or maybe the deafening roar of the rig's machinery drowned out their communication. Whatever it was, Trevor failed to fully close the access lock between the bell and the chamber. Will and Marty, thinking it was sealed, unhooked the bell. The result was a catastrophic, explosive decompression. Inside, the pressure was at 9 atmospheres. Outside, it was 1. The difference was staggering. The bell was blasted away with such force it killed Will instantly and left Marty critically injured. But what happened inside the chamber was a nightmare. For the 3 divers further back, the nitrogen in their blood expanded instantly. Their blood literally boiled in their veins. Forensics later found that as their arteries burst, the fat in their blood turned to solid lumps. These fat balls were found throughout their hearts, livers, and brains. Their bodies were transformed into unrecognizable masses in a split second. But Trevor Hall, who was standing right at the door, had it the worst. The air rushing out was so powerful it sucked his body through a tiny 2-foot-long crescent-shaped opening in the airlock. The force applied to his body was approximately 25 tons. He was shredded. He was ejected through that gap with such violence that his internal organs were blasted out of his chest cavity. Investigators found his windpipe, a section of his small intestine, and even his spinal column scattered outside the airlock. Hours later, they even found a section of his intestine hanging on a rail 10 meters above the airlock. The forensic experts said it looked like the organs had been cleanly dissected and expelled. There was almost no blood left at the crash site because the pressure had cleared it all out. The only mercy in this story, if you can even call it that, is that it happened so fast. According to the medical examiners, they were dead before their brains could even register the pain. I know, this was a heavy one. If this story left you as chilled as it left me, let me know. I've got plenty of other dark corners of history to share with you. See you in the next one.